What would you do if your HOA told you to chop down the oak tree your grandfather planted when he came home from Vietnam? Imagine standing in your yard, looking up at a tree older than half the people in your neighborhood, and being told it's non-compliant vegetation that must be removed in 30 days, or else you'll rack up fines until you break. My name's Tom Walker. I'm 58, a retired firefighter, and I've lived in Pine Hollow Estates for over 25 years. My wife, Susan, and I raised our kids here, and right in the middle of our yard stands that oak tree, planted by my granddad in 1975. He dug the hole himself, dropped in the sapling, and told me, "Boy, this tree'll outlive us all." He wasn't wrong. It's taller than every roof around, strong enough to carry a tire swing, wide enough to shade half the lawn. And to our HOA president, Karen, that oak is a threat to uniformity. Pine Hollow used to be a place where neighbors actually liked each other. We had summer block parties, fire pits, and potluck dinners. The HOA kept the pool clean, mowed the common areas, and that was about it. Then Karen moved in. You probably know the type: sharp haircut, color-coded binder, smile sweet enough to rot your teeth until she started quoting Section 12. Subparagraph C. Within a year, she'd run for HOA president and won. Suddenly, Pine Hollow wasn't about community, it was about control. Karen started with paint colors, mailbox styles, even which flowers were approved for front gardens. Then she set her sights higher, or rather, taller. Her crusade: tree uniformity. According to her, Pine Hollow needed a clean skyline. No trees taller than 15 feet. No branches crossing sidewalks. And get this, no legacy growth. That's when I found the violation stapled to my mailbox. Violation: notice, structure, unauthorized tree growth. Directive: remove within 30 days or face fines of $250 per day. Additional note: tree does not conform to community standards. I stood there, letter shaking in my hand, staring up at the oak that shaded our yard for nearly half a century. "Non-conforming," I muttered. "This tree was here before you, Karen." At the next HOA meeting, I showed up with a photo of my granddad holding the sapling in '75. Dirt still on his jeans, pride in his smile. This tree isn't a violation. I told the room. It's a legacy. It's safe, healthy, and older than your bylaws. Karen crossed her arms, lips curled. "Mr. Walker, while we appreciate your sentiment, rules are rules. That tree disrupts sightlines, creates excess leaf litter, and poses a hazard. Removal required." I raised my voice. "This isn't about leaves, it's about history." Karen smirked, tapped her gavel. Decision final. The crack echoed like an axe hitting wood. The fines started the next morning. Week 1. Tree non-compliance, $1,750 accrued. Week 2. Improper woodpile in backyard. Week 3. Unapproved garden furniture visible from street. It was obvious. Karen wanted to break me down. But instead of bending, I grabbed a binder, stuffed in every notice, and wrote across the cover in red marker: Oak Tree Defense, Exhibit A. Susan shook her head, sliding me a mug of coffee. "You're building a case file." I looked at her. "No, I'm building a wall she won't knock down." And then, neighbors started knocking. Mrs. Green had a maple her husband planted 30 years ago. She showed me her violation notice with trembling hands. The Rivera family had a pecan tree. Their kids climbed every summer, also flagged. "Even quiet, mister." Johnson got fined for excessive shrubbery density. One by one, they came with their letters, their frustration, their stories. That night, we stood together under my oak tree. Its branches stretched above us like arms wrapping the whole block. They can't cut us all down, I told them, but they'll try unless we stand together. Heads nodded, arms folded. For the first time, I saw fire in my neighbor's eyes. Earl, the Vietnam vet down the street, looked up at my oak and said, "That tree stood through storms bigger than her, and so will we." And just like that, beneath its branches, the battle for Pine Hollow began. That night under the oak, with lanterns flickering and neighbors huddled close, I felt something shift. For the first time since Karen stapled that violation notice to my mailbox, I wasn't standing alone. That tree had become more than wood and leaves. It was a rally point. The very next morning, I drafted a petition on my old desktop computer. Across the top, in bold, I typed, "We, the undersigned homeowners of Pine Hollow Estates, hereby call for the immediate recall of HOA President Karen Whitfield for abuse of authority, selective enforcement, and harassment." Susan leaned over my shoulder, sipping her coffee. "Straight to the point," she said. "Karen's gonna hate that." I cracked a grin. Good. Our first stop was Mrs. Green's place. She signed so hard the pen nearly ripped the paper. She told me my maple is cluttering the line of sight. My husband planted that tree the year we moved in. She's not cutting it down. And I'm not either. Next were the Riveras. Their kids swung from the pecan tree in the backyard, sticky with popsicle juice and summer sweat. Mr. Rivera signed without hesitation. "That tree's part of our family. If Karen wants it gone, she'll have to take me with it." By the end of the day, we had 15 signatures. By the end of the week, 40. Word spread like pollen in spring. Karen noticed. Of course, she did. 2 days later, new violation letters started flying around the neighborhood. Evelyn was fined for her birdbath. Non-approved water feature. The Johnsons were cited for unregulated shrub growth. I myself got 3 notices in one envelope. Oak leaves unswept from driveway. Excess shade on lawn causing grass variance. Mailbox paint chipped community standard breach. I slid them into the binder and labeled the tab Retaliation. The binder was starting to bulge, but instead of scaring people, Karen lit a fire under them. At church, neighbors pulled me aside, whispering, "Where do I sign?" At the grocery store, folks handed me folded violation letters with signatures tucked inside. At the diner, a waitress leaned over my booth and said, "My parents live here too. You make sure she's gone." By mid-month, we had 70 signatures, well past the majority we needed to force a recall. We held another meeting. This time, right under the oak tree itself. Its branches swayed overhead, scattering acorns onto the grass as neighbors gathered with lawn chairs and hot chocolate. I held up the petition, pages thick with names. This tree has stood for nearly 50 years. Karen thought she could order it gone with a stapled notice. But what she doesn't get is that it's not just a tree, it's us. Our history, our families, and if we stand together, no president with a gavel can cut us down. The crowd erupted in cheers. Earl raised his cane like a flagpole. The Rivera kids clapped so loud they startled the squirrels. And I swear, for a moment, the oak itself seemed to stand taller. But as I looked around at the smiles and the fire in everyone's eyes, I felt something tighten in my chest. Because if there's one thing I knew about Karen, it was this. She'd never go quietly. And sure enough, her nastiest tricks were waiting just over the horizon. Karen didn't wait long to show her teeth. The very week we filed the petition for recall, a slick, full-color flyer landed in every mailbox. On the front, a photo of a perfectly manicured lawn. No trees taller than a lamppost. Across the top in bold letters. Keep Pine Hollow beautiful. Vote stability. Vote Karen. On the back, things got ugly. She claimed agitators were spreading lies, destroying unity, and lowering property values. And right there in black ink was my name, Tom Walker. Susan read it out loud at the kitchen table, then slammed it down. She's making you the villain. Tom. I slipped the flyer into the binder under a new tab labeled Propaganda. Good, I muttered. That means she's nervous. But propaganda was just her opening shot. Next came the fines, more vicious than ever. Evelyn's birdbath was tagged again. This time as a mosquito-breeding hazard. The Riveras were cited for unauthorized children's play equipment. Even Mr. Johnson got slapped with a violation for unsightly hose storage. And me, 4 violations in 3 days. Oak, shedding excessive acorns. Tree roots visible near sidewalk. Unapproved mulch coloration. Non-uniform mailbox flag. I filed them all in the binder. Tabbed in bright red harassment. That binder was starting to feel like a weapon. Then came the creepiest move yet. One evening, my neighbors found packets shoved under their doors, labeled Community Safety Report. Inside were grainy photos of our homes, taken at night fences, porches, even backyards, each one stamped with captions like clutter, hazard, or non-compliant. Mrs. Green came over shaking. She's sneaking around with a camera. Tom, this isn't leadership, it's stalking. Standing under the oak that night, I looked at the thick branches above and felt my jaw tighten. She thinks shadows will scare us. She doesn't get it. This tree's lived through bigger storms than her. But here's the thing, instead of scaring folks, Karen only hardened them. At church that Sunday, Earl stood up and waved one of her reports high. If Karen thinks my crooked shed is a threat to this neighborhood, she's crazier than I thought. The whole congregation broke into laughter and applause. By early fall, the recall election date was set. The oak tree became our headquarters. Neighbors met under its branches. Kids playing tag while adults signed pledges to vote. People brought folding chairs, thermoses of coffee. Even a little banner the Rivera kids made, Save the Oak. Save Pine Hollow. One night, as lanterns glowed from the branches, I stood before the crowd, petition in hand. Karen's tried fines, flyers, and fear. But look around, we're still standing. And come election day, we'll remind her, this is our neighborhood, not her kingdom. The cheer that erupted rattled the branches. Evelyn banged her cane on the roots like a drum. Earl shouted, "That's right, let the oak stand taller." And in that moment, with acorns crunching under our feet and neighbors united like family, I realized something. Karen wasn't just fighting me. She was fighting a tree with deeper roots than her ambition and a neighborhood ready to defend it. The morning of the recall vote felt like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. Pine Hollow's community center had never been so full. Cars packed the lot. Folks walked in groups, whispering like they were heading into a courtroom instead of a gymnasium. Inside, a folding table held the ballot box. Volunteers, neighbors we trusted. Not Karen's hand-picked buddies checked names off the list one by one. Every ballot sliding into the box landed with a muffled thunk that echoed in my chest. Karen was there. Of course. Perched at the front in a sharp red blazer. Gavel in hand even though it wasn't her meeting anymore. She smiled, her politician's smile. But her eyes darted around the room. Restless. You could see it, she was counting heads. And the math didn't look good. I walked up with my ballot, her gaze drilling holes through me. I folded the slip slow, let it drop into the slot. And the sound was louder than it should have been, like a hammer striking a nail. As I turned, Earl leaned over and muttered. Sounded like freedom to me. When the last ballot was cast, the counters carried the box to the side. The whole room went still, so quiet I swear you could hear Evelyn's cane tapping nervously against the floor. Susan squeezed my hand until my knuckles cracked. Finally, Carla, one of the volunteers, stood with the results. Her voice shook but carried strong. Votes for recall 91. Votes against 23. For a second, silence. Then the room exploded. Cheers. Clapping. Stomping feet. Evelyn wept openly. Earl whooped loud enough to rattle the windows. Mrs. Green hugged her maple tree-loving self to tears. But Karen wasn't about to leave quietly. She slammed her gavel so hard the sound cracked across the room. This election is illegitimate, she shouted. These agitators are liars. And you'll all regret what you've done. Nobody cared. The roar of relief and victory drowned her out. Face burning. She stood and spat the words like, venom. This isn't over. Then she stormed out. Heels clacking like gunshots on the tile. That night, the oak tree glowed brighter than ever. Neighbors hung lanterns in its branches. Kids tied ribbons around the trunk. And we gathered beneath it like pilgrims at a shrine. People laughed, hugged, and toasted with cider. Earl raised his thermos high. To the oak that outlived a tyrant. The cheer that followed shook the branches overhead. But as I stood there, a binder heavy under my arm, I knew it wasn't finished. Karen wasn't the type to vanish after losing power. No, she'd be back. And her next moves would be darker than anything we'd seen so far. The first week after the recall felt like breathing clean air for the first time in years. Kids climbed the Rivera's pecan tree again. Evelyn rehung her wind chimes. And Mrs. Green sat under her maple like it was a throne. For a brief moment, Pine Hollow felt free. But deep down, I knew Karen. She wasn't the type to slink away quietly. She was the type to burn the field if she couldn't own the harvest. The first strike came in a thick envelope. Hand-delivered by a deputy. You've been served. Mr. Walker, he said with a sigh. Inside was a lawsuit. Karen was suing me personally for defamation, harassment, and emotional distress. She claimed I'd led a smear campaign, destroyed her reputation, and of course demanded the oak tree's removal as damages. Susan read the papers twice before tossing them on the table. She calls you a harasser. She stalked Evelyn with a camera. Still, seeing my name in legal print twisted my gut. I called Marcia, a lawyer friend. She flipped through the packet and laughed out loud. Classic slap suit. Judges see right through this garbage. She was right. At the hearing, the judge dismissed it before Karen's lawyer could finish his opening. Case dismissed with prejudice, he declared. Done. But when Karen left the courtroom, she turned and glared at me. I'd seen flames weaker than that look. The second strike came at midnight. Our motion light snapped on. The security camera caught two hooded figures creeping toward the oak. One holding a chainsaw. They tried to slice into a low branch before bolting when the light flared. Earl's deer cam caught the license plate. Belonged to a landscaping crew Karen had used before. The sheriff's office filed charges for attempted vandalism. Karen swore she had no idea. No one in Pine Hollow believed her. Meanwhile, the new board dug into finances, and what they found nearly knocked us off our feet. Tens of thousands of dollars had been siphoned into consulting fees to Karen's cousin. Legal retainers that never reached any law firm. Even HOA credit card purchases at luxury boutiques. At the next meeting, Carla projected the numbers on the wall. Gasps filled the room. She fined me for a lawn chair. Evelyn shouted. While she bought handbags with our dues, Carla didn't flinch. This has been sent to the county prosecutor. The cheer that followed shook the windows. But Karen wasn't done. Right before Thanksgiving, Earl came pounding on my door. Tom down by the creek. Now? We ran with flashlights. The lock on the drainage gate had been cut. Water rushing through faster than it should. If it had fully given way, half the lower lots, including mine, could have flooded. Deputy Collins crouched over the broken chain. This wasn't an accident. Someone wanted damage. Susan squeezed my arm. She'd risk flooding homes' families just to get even. I stared at the oak, silhouetted against the moonlight, and felt my jaw lock. She's desperate, I said, and desperate people are dangerous. But here's the thing about desperate moves, they don't scare people who've already stood up once. If Karen thought her lawsuits, her thugs, her sabotage would break Pine Hollow, she was dead wrong. All she'd done was prove how deep our roots ran. And like that oak tree, we weren't going anywhere. December came in cold. But Pine Hollow burned with something warmer than any furnace resolve. After the drainage sabotage, nobody was scared anymore. If Karen wanted to play dirty, fine. We were done playing nice. Carla called a neighborhood gathering not in the community center Karen once ruled, but under the oak itself. We strung lights through the branches, set out folding chairs, and brought thermoses of cider. The oak towered above us, bare branches stretching like arms guarding its people. Carla stood at the base, her voice strong. This oak isn't just Tom's tree. It's our landmark. It's seen us through birthdays, barbecues, storms, and fights. Tonight, I move that we, the board, recognize it as a Pine Hollow heritage tree. The crowd erupted. Evelyn smacked her cane against the roots, shouting, "Here!" You'll hear Earl raised his thermos high. The Rivera kids wrapped ribbons around the trunk, for the first time in months. People laughed without that nervous edge. From that night on, the new board worked differently. Instead of raking in money from petty fines, they started the Neighbor Fund. Dues went into repairing George's porch steps, replacing Mrs. Green's fence gate, and fixing the playground swings Karen had once called hazardous. Instead of rules about curtain colors, they made a heritage registry Evelyn's wind chimes, the Rivera's pecan. Even George's old rocking chair got listed as community treasures. Karen's vision had been a neighborhood of clones. Ours became a patchwork quilt and it was beautiful. But Pine Hollow wasn't the only one watching. Letters started arriving from across the state, then across the country. One from Ohio, our HOA banned porch swings. We thought we couldn't fight back until we heard about your oak. One from Texas, they tried to bulldoze our community garden. Your story gave us courage. Even a neighborhood in Oregon mailed us a photo of neighbors hugging a big cedar, holding a banner stand like Pine Hollow. I sat at the kitchen table, binder still on the counter, reading them out loud to Susan. She squeezed my hand and whispered, "Your granddad thought he planted a tree. Tom, he didn't know he planted a beacon." In mid-December, we held the first annual Oak Festival. Neighbors decorated fences and porches with lanterns. Kids painted wooden ornaments shaped like leaves. And Earl even set up a grill by the tree. When the sun went down, we gathered around the trunk. Lanterns swaying, ribbons fluttering. Carla climbed onto a chair and said, "This oak was almost lost to one person's hunger for control. Instead, it became the heart of our community. Let it remind us all home isn't about compliance. It's about belonging." The cheer that rose up shook the night sky. I stepped back, looking at the oak bathed in golden light. Its trunk bore scars. Its branches were bare, but it stood steady as ever. Stronger than Karen, stronger than fear. She'd tried to chop it down. Instead, she'd made it immortal. By the new year, Pine Hollow's story had leapt beyond our fences. What started as one oak tree standing against a clipboard had become a headline. The local news first, the oak that wouldn't fall. Then a regional paper ran with how a small town took down its HOA tyrant. Before long, television crews showed up, parking their vans under the very tree Karen wanted gone. At first, I didn't want the attention. I'm a retired firefighter, not some activist. But Susan nudged me. Tom, this isn't about fame. It's about showing people they don't have to be afraid. So I stood under my granddad's oak. Neighbors all around, cameras rolling, and told the truth. About the fines, the threats, the sneaky photos, the recall, and about how a tree older than the HOA itself became the thing that brought us all together. The clip spread faster than wildfire. Letters poured in from across the country. A man from Michigan wrote, "They tried to cut down the willow my wife planted before she passed. I fought back because of you." A woman in Arizona, "They banned our grapevine trellis. We thought we had no chance. But your oak gave us courage." A whole block in Texas sent a photo of their live oak with a banner stretched across it. "Roots run deep. We stand with Pine Hollow." One night, I sat at the kitchen table reading those letters while Susan stirred her tea. She smiled softly. "Your granddad's tree didn't just shade this yard, Tom. It cast shade across the whole country." Invitations came too. One weekend, I drove 2 towns over to speak at a community rally. Their HOA had demanded everyone cut down backyard clotheslines, calling them visual clutter. Folks were angry but scared. I held up my binder, thick with Karen's old violation letters. They can threaten, they can fine, they can harass, but they can't take what you refuse to give. Stand together, and they'll fold. By the end of the night, that neighborhood voted to recall their board. Driving home, Earl in the passenger seat slapped my shoulder. "Never thought I'd see the day a tree turned into a revolution." Back in Pine Hollow, the board doubled down on celebration. They launched the Heritage Trail, marking every violation Karen once wrote with plaques instead. Evelyn's wind chimes, Mrs. Green's maple, the Rivera's pecan, they were all on the list. Kids made a scavenger hunt out of it, racing from yard to yard, learning the stories. The oak was the crown jewel. A bronze plaque at its base read, "Planted 1975 by James Walker. Preserved by the people of Pine Hollow." By summer, we held the first Oak Festival. Music filled the air. Neighbors grilled ribs. Kids painted wooden leaves and tied them to the branches. When the sun dipped, lanterns glowed from every limb, and the whole block gathered in the oak's shadow. Carla took the mic. "This tree should have been cut down. Instead, it's standing taller than ever because people stood with it. Let this oak remind us that roots matter more than rules." The cheer that followed rolled like thunder. Evelyn wiped tears from her cheeks. Earl toasted with his thermos. The Riveras' kids sat swinging from a branch, laughter echoing into the night. But the moment that hit me hardest, a family from 3 states away drove all day just to stand under the oak. Their little girl touched the trunk and whispered, "Daddy says this tree is a hero." I felt my throat close. My granddad had planted a sapling nearly 50 years ago, never imagining it would become a monument not just to our family, but to anyone who ever had something worth fighting for. Karen tried to erase it. Instead, she gave it immortality. By the time autumn rolled back around, Pine Hollow was a different place. Kids biked past porches without parents worrying about violations. Evelyn's wind chimes sang in the breeze. Earl painted his shed door bright blue, just to spite Karen's old rules. And every evening, folks lingered under the oak tree, sipping coffee, trading stories, and laughing like neighbors again. Karen was gone, moved out months earlier, Her house sold to a young family who wasted no time hanging a swing from their porch. Her name was nothing more than a sour aftertaste. But the oak she tried to destroy it stood taller than ever. One crisp October afternoon, the County Historical Commission returned. They planted a bronze plaque at the base of the tree. The Pine Hollow Oak planted 1975. Preserved as a symbol of community spirit. Neighbors gathered around, clapping, snapping pictures. Kids traced their fingers over the engraved letters. Earl muttered, "About time this tree got the respect it deserves." Evelyn sniffled into her scarf. Even Susan leaned against me, eyes misty, whispering, "Your granddad would have been proud." Tom. That night, lanterns swung from the branches, glowing like stars caught in the limbs. Neighbors crowded the yard, sharing cider, roasting marshmallows, telling stories about their own trees, porches, and gardens. I sat on the porch swing, binder still heavy on my lap. But for once, it wasn't a shield. It was a trophy. Proof that we'd stood against something bigger than just fines and flyers. Susan slipped her hand into mine. "Funny," she said. "Karen thought this tree was the problem. Turns out, it was the cure." I looked up at the branches stretching into the night sky, solid and scarred, and nodded. She wanted it gone, but she only made it stronger. And here's the thing. I carry now there will always be Karens. People who hide behind rule books, who use power to bully instead of serve. But there will also always be oaks, things planted with love, rooted in memory, worth standing for. The question is, when the notice shows up in your mailbox, when someone tells you to tear down what matters most, what will you do? Fold or fight? Me? I chose to fight. And every creak of this oak in the wind whispers the same answer my granddad gave me nearly 50 years ago. Stand.